Welcome to the Primo's Musings podcast.
Good evening. Hi, Josh. How are you doing?
Doing great, Shrey. How are you doing today?
Good, good. I think we know we would be back again. We have the college football playoffs in full gear starting tonight, but then we can also go in different places. I know we had the Belichick hiring in North Carolina, then we have some NFL going on, picking up steam. But I think let's start with something that does not happen in college football, the playoffs. That has never happened. This is the time where we go the first round matchup, which is all going to be at home. So for the listeners, I'll just recap and then we'll go one by one. So tonight's matchup is Notre Dame and Indiana, the battle of the Hoosier State. Then we got Texas playing Clemson. Then you got SMU going to Penn State, and then you got your alma mater, Tennessee, traveling all the way to Ohio State. So let's start off with the first matchup between which one you want to start? You want to start with your home, or let's
Yeah, we
keep
can
your
start. We can
Tennessee
start with
to last?
we'll start with the one tonight. We'll go with the battle
Okay,
of the
let's
Hoosier
start with the
State.
one tonight. Okay, let's start with the Notre Dame, Indiana. I mean, Indiana has had a season like no other. They were what 10-0 at one point, and they definitely surprised a lot of people in college football. So, and I think the weather was. I thought the weather was going to play a big play tonight, but I don't know. Like, let's talk about who you think is going to win. I think the line is around 6.5 or 7.5. Let me quickly check. Yeah,
Yeah, all of the lines I think are at
7.5.
least a one touchdown difference, if not more than that. Yeah, Kursignetti has done an unbelievable job with Indiana in his first year, really just bringing a ton of transfers over from JMU. And they really ran. They were running through teams, great passing attack all season, and then ran into a tough test at Ohio State that obviously didn't go their way. But yeah, I mean, honestly, it's hard just talking about this whole weekend. It's hard to remember a single sports weekend where I've been more excited to just sit on the couch and take it all in, because every single hour starting tonight at 8 Eastern and then basically all day tomorrow is good game after good game. Tonight's going to be a really, really intriguing matchup between, I think, two very different styles of offense. I mean, you have Notre Dame, it's got an unbelievable rushing attack, strong in the trenches, strong rush defense, and then you have Indiana that can swing it all over the place. And so you mentioned the weather. I saw this morning it was snowing out. Don't know if that's going to continue throughout the evening, but definitely something to keep an eye on. Where I mean, if it is going to be a battle of the elements, you think that definitely has to favor Notre Dame. And even if it is clear, I mean, Notre Dame's play style and the way that they finished the season, I think you got to like their chances going into tonight. It would not, I mean, and out of the four games, I think that this is probably the most intriguing one for the average fan, just in a sense that you have this blue blood in Notre Dame, and then a team that's really came out of nowhere that everyone thinks has a chance to go far. One other thing too is, I mean, the winner of this plays Georgia, who just came out today. Carson Beck probably going to be out for the quarterfinals. You're going to have Gunnar Stockton playing a game that, again, we talked about this last time. Team's going to be hot off a pretty big win, regardless of if it's Notre Dame or Indiana. And then after that, you have Boise State or Penn State, most likely, unless SMU sneaks out of there. You could very easily see the winner of tonight's game be playing in the national title. They have a very clear path. Obviously, Georgia is Georgia, but they'll have a different look for sure. But I like Notre Dame. How about you?
Yeah, I think so too, because you kind of touched upon this. I think they're just going to rotate the rock when you talk about just one after another. That's what Notre Dame is going to do, and that's what they've been good at. The one thing I do see is that um, Notre Dame defense could be tested by the passing attack of the Hoosiers. I mean, I think they're very efficient. So I think that's going to be interesting to see. This could, I don't know, it all depends on how close the game is. I mean, this could easily be a blowout for Notre Dame if they keep running the rock, and then Indiana not being able to do much with their offense. I see this could be a blowout. I mean, I think the line I just looked at was 7.5. And I believe that Notre Dame is going to win by more. And I think you bring up a good point about Notre Dame's chances against Georgia, who will be without their starting quarterback. So the path definitely seems very clear for Notre Dame. Obviously, they have to get through this game. And Indiana has been a story of this college football this year. Definitely, like as mentioned during my earlier. Like, they started 10-0. And I'm so used to it. It's funny because as a UConn fan, I was actually looking at Indiana playing at UConn many years ago, but now they're actually playing in the college football playoffs. So that's how far these guys have come. Unbelievable.
It really is. I mean, you definitely think basketball school when you think of Indiana, and they've totally flipped it on its head. And you got to think if Kursignetti stays for a little while longer, I don't know much about their donors, but I'm sure with NIL and the amount of the size of that fan base, I'm sure they'll continue to see success. So could be the very beginning for Indiana, regardless of what happens tonight. But it would not surprise me at all if Indiana went into South Bend and pulled out a win. And to be honest, I think that Notre Dame will beat Indiana, but I think that Indiana probably would have a better chance of beating Georgia than Notre Dame does.
Yeah.
Just in the sense of the way that they're able to throw, their passing attack and they can put up points.
Yeah, I believe India. For me, I think as big as a story as Indiana is, I feel it's Notre Dame's time to shine. I remember you and I were talking about, can Notre Dame? I think at the time you were still waiting for Tennessee to get in, and you wanted Notre Dame to lose to USC, but that didn't happen certainly. So Notre Dame played really out of their minds that game, and I feel that they would do the same. I mean, they're not going to pass on this home game. They're going to go in and win rather easily. We're both, I think, so we're going to stay with Notre Dame for that, and then they would play, like you said, Georgia. So let's get to the next one. I think it's the SMU playing Penn State, going to Happy Valley. It's going to be a huge game. I know a lot of Penn State fans at work. They're being excited about this game. Again, it's a home playoff game. I mean, that's one of the beautiful things that they did about college football this year, just like the NFL. So I think Penn State is definitely heavily favored. So, wanted to hear your thoughts on the Penn State and SMU matchup.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to see Penn State dropping this one. James Franklin definitely has, I guess you would say, a bad habit of dropping some of these bigger games. But I don't know if this necessarily feels, and obviously it is a big game for both teams. But being a noon kickoff, being a team like SMU that is not one of those that you would be generally intimidated by, coming up this year, really coming in on the scene. I think Penn State wins this one pretty handily. I think out of all of the first four games in the first round, I think that this will be the most comfortable margin of victory. I like Penn State in this game. They definitely showed some signs of, early on in the year against Bowling Green. They had a close game against Minnesota, so they can definitely up, and SMU could jump on them, but they're pretty good on both sides of the ball. I think they have better athletes. I like Penn State in this game.
Yeah, and just to talk about Penn State, they just recently played against Oregon, and that was a phenomenal game. Their offense was clicking on all cylinders. It was a very close game. I mean, Oregon came up big in the last, but if they could pull this performance against Oregon, I don't see why not. They would do the same thing against SMU. I think I think when I look at the line, I think the line is Penn State. Hold on, I think I had it right here, and then it suddenly slipped away. 7.5, which I think it's slow if you ask me. And I think Penn State is going to, with the offense that they have, SMU is there because they are here, but I think they've had a great season. But I see Penn State winning it much easier. It's going to be like a 34-20 game or something like that. I don't see SMU challenging them.
Yeah, I could very easily see that. They in SMU, just with the way that I mean they showed a great fight in that ACC championship game, coming back, being down I think by must have been a 3-score game to make it close in the end, and obviously lost in a walk-off field goal. Not having much momentum to carry into this game. It's hard to see them keeping this one close. With you with that one, Penn State as well playing Boise State in the next round.
Good, and that'll be a very interesting matchup. And I think I would think Penn State will be favored in that matchup as well for against Boise State. All right, let's get to this one: the Texas and Clemson. Interestingly, I didn't know about this. Texas and Clemson. This is their first ever meeting. I mean, I
Odd.
have to check. I have to check this, but I did hear about this somewhere, and I think it may be good. My friend and I always say we'll get our statistician check on this thing sometime. But I think it's the first ever meeting, and I think it's 11.5 over Clemson. And let's talk about Texas, and I saw them play against I think Texas A&M. I think they pulled out a win. I wasn't really impressed with them that game. So I mean, and again, Clemson, their fall from their glory years. I mean, but Dabo Sweeney could still coach. You see where I'm going with this thing, but
Mhm.
I'll let you start with your prediction, and then I'll go with mine.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people are thinking that these two teams are heading in opposite directions, and I do have some strong opinions on both teams. I'll start with Clemson. I do not think that they are a great team. I don't think that they belong in the playoffs, and they really, I mean, I think the committee would agree, and the rules that were set up allowed them to sneak in, barely beating SMU. They lost to South Carolina. They got blown out by Georgia. And I just don't think that they have the team to get over the hump in this first round. I like Texas comfortably in this game. And I think the intriguing thing to talk about here is Quinn Ewers and the way that he finished up the season. As you mentioned, he didn't play very well against A&M, didn't play very well against Georgia.
Right.
There's a good chance with Steve Sarkisian coming into this game, if he and you wouldn't have seen this in the SEC championship, I think, because you didn't want to introduce any sort of quarterback drama around who is the starter going into the playoffs. And ultimately, that game was relatively inconsequential to Texas for the rest of the season. They would have obviously avoided that first round game, but taking that 5 seed is a pretty easy path to when push comes to shove. I think they'll be quick to take Quinn Ewers out, which I still like him, but I think they will put Arch in if there's any sort of signs of trouble. So I still like Quinn
Short leash.
Ewers.
You think Quinn Ewers is on a short leash then?
I think he's on a short leash. I still believe in him. I personally, I think he is, when he's at his best, I think he is the best quarterback in the country. And I think we will see his best. So this is by no means um, a vote against him or anything like that. But they have options, as has been widely discussed, and just really throughout the season. I think you'll see multiple looks, even if he is playing well. And I have a hard time seeing Clemson pulling this one out. I like Texas in this one.
Yeah, I mean, before you started yours, I definitely thought that Texas is going to lose. But I think when I looked at Texas, like I said, they were not really impressive against Texas A&M. But one thing that kept them in the game was their defense. Texas is very good at, and one thing is that I saw a stat where they've only allowed 200-yard rushers, and there's not many teams that have passed even against Texas defense. So that I know the Texas defense is good. Clemson has got a very good quarterback. So
Yeah, Klubnik has had a resurgent year for sure.
yes, yeah. So he's got a good year. But to your point, going back to what you just talked about, Clemson didn't deserve it. I agree with you too. I think Clemson was actually ranked number 16 in the final rankings, and I don't know how they made it to the top 12. And I think this is something that college football, and I know they're talking about expansions already
Hmm.
to 14, but we'll see. But I think that earlier before this podcast, I was actually leaning towards um, Clemson because of the experience that they've had in the college football playoffs in the past. When they had some good players, and Clemson had actually won national championship. Having said that, I think Texas is going to win this one too.
Yeah.
I think, but 11.5. But I think it's a lot of points
It
to
is a lot.
cover.
It is a lot. I don't know if they cover, but I definitely like them winning. What are your thoughts on Dabo long term? I mean, you've had them where he was the guy for years. Like it was Saban and then Dabo. Now, I mean, Clemson fans wanted to run him out of town over the last couple of years, and now it seems like they're kind of working their way back in. It seems like Dabo's kind of opening up to the transfer idea. I think he actually got his first ever transfer uh, last week, I want to say. So, what do you think of Dabo like long term?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a interesting thing. But I think, when you ask me, I think going back to what I was talking about, it's the 11.5. I still think it's too much. I think they will cover, but I think Texas is not going to lose this game against Clemson, I think.
Yeah, definitely agree.
All right, this is it. This is it. This is what you wanted to talk about. The Tennessee going to Ohio State. And I'll set some stage here. Ohio State seems like a lot of Tennessee fans have been lapping up tickets there. And that's going to be interesting seeing a sea of yellow or sea of orange over a sea of red. And we'll see if that'll come to fruition. But here's the thing, I'll set up the stage here. Ryan Day, even the article I was just reading in the Wall Street Journal about that, where Ohio State fans are not really happy about the way he's coached. It's funny, when I looked at his stat line, he's 64-3. I mean, overall. No, not overall. 64-3, and I'll just come to the other one. He's 2-7 when it comes to playing against Michigan and in college football playoff. That doesn't bode well in a program like Ohio State or Alabama or Georgia or whatever. I mean, all these top echelon programs. If you can't beat your hated rival and if you cannot perform in the playoffs, they don't care if Ohio State beats an Appalachian State or Ohio State beats some team out there that no one cares about Ryan. I mean, so I think Ryan Day's on the hot seat. So I'm going to give you the floor. This is your game.
Of course, I have some thoughts here for those who didn't listen last time. I'm a huge Tennessee fan. Season ticket holder, graduated in 19, been to pretty much every game this year. Ohio State fans, regardless of whether they win or lose, they will spin this in a way to where they will be happy. If they lose this game, Ryan Day will be fired, and they will have their nightmare will be over. If they win this game, they won a playoff game. I think Tennessee's going to win this game. I really think Tennessee is going to pull this off. As you mentioned, there's going to be a sea of orange going up to Columbus. I've seen ticket prices plummet down below $100 a ticket, which, I mean, seeing ticket prices for games in Neyland for big games, I guarantee you that ticket is no less than $800 to get in if that game was in Knoxville. So I think it will be a sea of orange. I personally know a bunch of people going up there, and it's going to be a very, very weird feeling. I think that Ohio State fans are going to be in for a rude awakening when it comes to thinking they have a home field advantage for this game. And I've also heard a lot, and I feel like this is probably like a personal attack when I see Ohio State fans talking about my Vols. I really think that the weather is being very overplayed here. It gets cold in Knoxville too. And Ohio State pretty much exclusively recruits from Florida, from California, from Texas, from Georgia. So the fact that it's going to be 25 degrees, I don't think that's going to be a big factor. So I like Tennessee. I personally think that everything that Michigan did well to beat Ohio State, I think Tennessee does better. They run the ball better. They have a better pass rush. Ohio State's beat up on the front, and with their offensive line, and they're going to put good pressure on Will Howard. And I think we're going to win this game. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, and I don't think anyone would be surprised if Tennessee did not win. They're 7.5-point underdogs, which I don't really understand. But yeah, I'm fired up for this game. I mean, as far as games, which unfortunately I will not be going to, this is by far the most excited I've ever been for a game. And I will be making my way to Pasadena for the Rose Bowl against Oregon if we do pull this one out.
And I hope you do. The only thing I see is that I agree with one comment you just made about the weather. I think that's the most overplayed stat there, talking about the weather. It happens in the NFL sometimes where a team like Tampa Bay going all the way to Green Bay, but that's Green Bay you're talking about. That's completely different.
Yeah.
But to your point, college football is actually more, I think they recruit mostly from southern states like Ohio State, like you mentioned, like unlike NFL teams, where NFL teams, you have players coming from all the places, and you typically see players coming from, even like the eastern seaboard as well. But to your point, I think it's going to. So, a couple of things I did notice because I think even just watching Tennessee games a little bit, one thing that they've struggled on is the offense. So you definitely need to. I think if you go up very quickly and like Ohio State playing against Michigan, their offense was putrid, almost putrid. They couldn't move the ball.
Yep.
They had like a turnover near the red zone as well. I think it's going to come down to which team can move the ball well against the other teams. And if Tennessee does go in to Ohio State and say quickly jumps on, say a 10-0 lead, you could see the Boo Birds coming in Ohio State. And that would give Tennessee a little more, I would say, fuel to put this game away. Again, to your point, it could go the other way. Ohio State could surprise us. I mean, all the things about Ryan Day, he's still, what is that? I said 64-3 against him, but then he's still like, he's won a lot of games. So it's just that he doesn't win many in the playoffs. So I think it's going to come there. I mean, Ohio State still has very good receivers, but, I'm a little, I'm not sold.
That's the other point there too with you talk about the receivers. I mean, that's one of the big things. Like that's one of their greatest advantages, I would say, is their ability to throw the ball. I mean, if you're
Yeah.
going to talk about the weather, that piece alone favors Tennessee. Tennessee is a very very run heavy offense. I think they're going to drag this game into the mud. Where I don't think Tennessee's going to have to put up 30 points to win this game. I think they'll put up maybe 21 to 24 points. And they're gonna. I think Ohio State's gonna have a really hard time moving the ball.
Yeah.
This is gonna be a low scoring game, especially if Tennessee does win, it'll definitely be a low scoring game, and I think it will be because Will Howard will have a hard time getting the ball to his talented.
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to the early. If you can go in early, I saw in some areas that some people have predicted 20-7 Tennessee, which was like mind-boggling and shocking to me. But I think, like I said, both teams are talented. I mean, we know that, and I didn't realize this too. And you can confirm with me. You're a Tennessee fan. The last time Tennessee played, I think Peyton Manning was a quarterback of Tennessee. The last time they even played Ohio State.
I believe so. I've seen some clips on Twitter over the past couple weeks. I want to say it was like if it was Peyton, it was obviously like in the late '90s. But
Yeah.
I believe it would have been a
Well,
bowl game.
I just see an SI right now. These two teams have not played each other since Peyton Manning played a quarterback. So I have to check the other stat, but that is kind of mind-boggling. The same with Texas and Clemson not even played each other, being two marquee teams, and you've had some great quarterbacks in both Texas and Clemson who have gone to the NFL. So that's totally surprising to me. So I think we're both. I'm staying with Tennessee too, although I do think it's going to be a much closer game. I'm predicting a 24-21. Not for you. Like, see, it's good for someone like, but I predict some things like that, which means it's a very close game. I think it's going to be Tennessee goes up 24-21. Ohio State trying to drive to score the game winning, and they get intercepted or fumble. That's the way I'm going to see the
Out
game.
of all the games, I feel like this is the game that most people are picking against Vegas, which is makes me a little bit worried in the fact that everyone is, the last time they saw Ohio State was an absolute disaster. And then you see this still, I think, a larger, as you said, I think it was 7.5 point spread.
Yeah.
It's Vegas has to know something, and I hope they're wrong. I don't, like you said, it's going to be a close game. By no means am I saying Tennessee will blow Ohio State out, although I would love to see it. This is going to be a low
Trust
scoring
me,
game.
I would love to see that too. So nothing again. I have zero rooting interest against Ohio State. It's just I don't know for some reason. Um, I've never been Ohio State, even though my friend is going to kill me because he's one of my best friends is a big Ohio State fan, and he himself wants Ryan Day fired, and he wants Tennessee to go into Ohio State and beat them. So
That's what I'm saying. Is if your Ohio State friends, I mean, they will if they lose this game, they will still be happy because their nightmare will be over.
exactly, which they think it is, because and then they have to find a coach who can come in and take them to the promised land again.
Urban Meyer.
So yeah, so I think we all agree on that. Usually when I do these, usually I'll have this, but I think just looking at the trends, and maybe this is the first time, the playoff, it's kind of very interesting. So let's quickly jump to what you texted me about yesterday, because this is, I would say, much closer to me. You have my ex football coach who has won 6 Super Bowls with the Patriots. I never thought I would see it. Even Tom Brady commented on it. Even all the Patriots players like Edelman and Gronkowski commented on it. That Belichick taking the North Carolina job. And as it is, I've even seen some rumors where they said, I know we were talking about this playoff here, but Quinn Evers seems like, they want to put Manning there in Texas, that's for sure. So, which means he's not going to go to the NFL, but where better that he can go to learn more to become a very good NFL quarterback.
That is the first time I've heard that part. That would be unbelievable.
Okay, so you didn't hear that.
I've not
It's
heard that
funny
one
because
yet. That's a hell of a take, though.
okay, all right. So maybe again, I'm proven wrong there, but this is something I heard from a friend of mine who texted me yesterday, and he said, "Hey, you think Quinn Evers goes to North Carolina?" I said, "Wow, that's something I haven't heard," and so that's why I brought it up here. I thought it'll start a little conversation here. So, what did you think about um, the move for Belichick going from NFL to the broadcast, not to the broadcast, to the media, back to college football, which I never thought. It's almost
Yeah.
like a Saban-like thing.
Yeah, I did not have Belichick coming to college football on my 2024 bingo card. It was If he was going to go to college, I probably would have guessed that it would have been to a military academy, just in a sense of just being used to and being a very disciplinary head coach. And the way that college football is going, and that's really the critique with all of this, is that given that there's this push to NIL, there's this push to really recruiting as a whole and transfers and all that, you would think that North Carolina would really not go this direction, especially with, I mean, they had Mac Brown this past year, who's also an older head coach that seemed to be having a hard time keeping up with NIL in this new era of college football. And they seem to, and Belichick's a unique instance. I'm not comparing him to Mac Brown, but it seems like they're almost doubling down on that style of coaching. Granted, Belichick is a whole different animal. It is an unbelievable storyline to have in college football, especially in the ACC now, where the ACC is relatively weak, I would say. You know, obviously you have SMU and Clemson that are still going to be there. You're still going to have Miami, but this is a whole other personality, a whole unknown that is really added to college football now. So I'm really, really excited to see how it'll play out. And I think he'll do really well as long as he has the support. And what I've heard is that he'll probably run this more like an NFL team where he'll be more of the
He did
GM.
hire Mike Lombardi, who was his right hand, for many years in the Patriots. And Lombardi is someone who's been very close to him. So he wrote the book about him, I think. So it's going to run like an NFL team. And then the fact that you talk about NIL, which was very interesting because the NIL money just, I think, quadrupled. I think they're almost like 20 million. And then the reason why Nick Saban actually left college football was because of NIL. And the fact that both Saban and Belichick, I mean, they all both started in Cleveland together. They're very good close friends. And, Belichick always goes to Alabama to go and see Saban's, and he always gets a lot of players from Alabama into the Patriots. So there is some connection there. They're good friends. They've known each other for 30, 40 years. Whereas you saw one coach like Saban went from, he was actually sick of the NIL and he left, and then he's became a broadcaster. And then you see Belichick, who's jumping into a college football where he almost has to recruit almost year in and year out, which is probably like the NFL. That's what you do in the NFL. But again, for Belichick, you need a quarterback. I already see some signs on X platform where he's already signed a few players. People are coming in. So, but again, does it translate to wins? That remains to be seen. Now, however, his old ex-players like Brady have openly come out and said, well, they should be happy to be coached by Belichick. I mean, for whatever you make out of Belichick and Brady after 20 years, I mean, what marriage lasts 20
Yeah.
years in the sports? And I think Brady has been overly, I mean, in fact, Brady and Belichick do a podcast together, so let's go podcast together. So I think that I'm excited to see. I actually want him to succeed because, I mean, for
It's good for the
a pay
sport for
for
sure.
team like the Patriots, who were like the doormat of the NFL, which right now they are now, that he gave 20 years of almost like joy, to the point that my kids don't even remember the bad Patriots. The only thing they know is like success every year in and year out. And for any team, that's what the Chiefs are going through right now. For any team to go through that, I'm rooting for Belichick to make. And in fact, I think I wouldn't be surprised if I see him in the stands when UConn plays UNC in the Fenway Bowl in Boston, and my kids and I are thinking about whether to go to that game or the Patriots and Chargers game. So we're debating which one to go. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm sure he will be there. That's gonna be interesting. That's a good point with Saban too. I can definitely see him providing some support for Belichick. I know, like you said, they're pretty close friends. I actually saw, I think it was yesterday, they had a transfer from Alabama to North Carolina. So there's definitely some momentum there with the transfer portal. I think he'll do very well there. One of the other things I wanted to touch up on is, although I think he may have a hard time recruiting high school kids, and granted, I don't think he's going to be the one going into living rooms and recruiting high schoolers and
No.
doing that whole song and dance. But I can very easily see a lot of players that break out from smaller schools, or players that are, they go to a big school right away. Obviously, North Carolina is a big school, but if they go to a bigger school and they realize, okay, like I want to get serious, I want to have the best coaching possible, that's when UNC is gonna really and Belichick's gonna really be able to make a good pitch. And I think he will be successful. I don't know if it will be right away, and I hope that they give him the runway to do so. I also think with and you probably feel like this with the Patriots fans. Actually, this is actually probably a good question for you. I mean, when it comes to Brady versus Belichick, I think a lot of this is like the how much success you attribute to either of them went toward Brady when he left and then won a Super Bowl immediately in Tampa Bay. And I feel like Belichick, since that happened, he had some rough years at the end. I feel like he probably feels like he is. People are almost making it seem like he was along for the ride than as one of the greatest, if not the greatest head coach of all time. And so I'm wondering if that had something to do with him wanting to take a job in college to prove that not only can he win in the NFL, but he could also win really working from scratch with a program that has had a couple of really tough years.
Yeah, and you would never get me. I mean, there are a lot of Patriots fans in the New England area who take the Belichick versus Brady. This one, I'm probably one of the very few to say it was a marriage that happened, that was an unlikely one, and it happened. And Brady's first few years in the NFL was thanks to Belichick because Belichick focused on the defense, and the defense was just amazing for the Patriots from 2001 to 2005. But they had the best defense. I mean, you could name all these players, and they're so good, like Law and McInnes and Bruschi, and all these guys were so good. And then as the offense started to move around, like with Josh McDaniel, the Brady started, you know, throwing more in the air, and it became a more Brady offense. But the defense was still there. I mean, even in 2018 when the Patriots won the Super Bowl, I mean, they shut down. The Rams scored 3 points in the Super Bowl. So that pretty much tells you how good Brady. Even though with Brady was still at a high, and then I think it was just a mutual parting of ways where Brady wanted a little more freedom. And again, I'm a big Brady fan, but for someone to say that, well, he went to, I mean, I still give him credit for going to Tampa. Tampa had all the pieces. They had a very good defense. I mean, who would not sign up to throw to
Oh,
Chris Godwin,
they have players coming out
Mike
of the
Evans,
woodworks to go sign and play for with him. So
and their side like Leonard Fournette. So I mean, from a right, and then he signed Gronkowski. So and apparently he even tried to recruit Edelman, and Edelman was already saying, "No, I think I want to retire as a Patriot." But I would never take sides in the Belichick and Brady thing. I still think the Patriots still last year. I think I would still sign up for Belichick to be my coach right now, in spite of how it turned
yeah.
out.
Gerard Mayo, by the way, is a tennis. He's a
I love Mayo. I love Mayo as a player. He was a first round draft pick, and I'm willing to give him uh, a little bit of a rope too. I think a lot of people in Boston are actually absolutely just killing him on the radio, and I think it's totally unfair. I think they have a quarterback, so now you just have to build the defense around him. You still have to build a
get some
team
receivers.
around him, and he himself said, May. The good thing was like even though they've been saying when Drake May. Yeah, it's weird. Like Drake May from North Carolina, and then you got Tennessee. May actually came out and openly said out a couple of days ago. And he said Mayo is, I mean, someone I trust. I mean, I'm thankful for that. So I think he has a vote of confidence from the quarterback. So, which usually means that the owner has to kind of listen to the quarterback. And I think I still want to give Mayo one more year to see if that would happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it would be a very quick decision if they were going to go separate ways. I do like Jared Mayo. I think that they or Draw Mayo. They definitely I think overachieved this year. I mean Drake May getting thrust into that situation and then still looking the part. A lot to be excited about. I think as a Patriots fan, I think they'll be successful and they really like you said they need to build up a defense. They need to get a good wide receiver one into that offense so that for
Well,
Drake May as a security blanket.
I'm still mad at the Patriots for trading down and losing out on Ladd McConkey after seeing him yesterday. I think they said that he's got more yards yesterday he caught than Jawan Baker and Polk that we had. We picked two
There was
receivers.
there was a lot of excitement about Jalen Polk too, like at the beginning of the
Well, we'll
year.
see. I mean, he needs to get out his Instagram and play more, and he makes all these errors. Like he had many penalties. He gets in the call, he gets in the game, and then he has like a false start penalty, and then it pulls Patriots back. I think it's just a learning thing, but I bet May and Polk and Baker will work in the off season, and then we'll work on that. So let's quickly. I know you wanted to talk about a little bit about Atlanta. Let's hit on that. You had Michael Penix Jr., who's going to be the starting quarterback. I think he was actually at Costco, I think,
Yep.
eating, buying a hot dog or something when he got the call that he was going to be the starting quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons. Let me set the stage here. I remember watching the draft very clearly after the Falcons had signed Cousins to a huge deal. And I was watching the draft, and I was telling a friend of mine at the time saying, I bet Kirk Cousins is throwing rocks at the TV after them drafting Michael Penix Jr. from Washington. And again, his last game in the college football didn't go well. I think Michigan beat up on him.
Tough
So,
tennis
your
too.
thoughts on Michael Penix Jr.? What do you think for the Falcons going forward? And because they're still in the hunt, because they're only a game behind um,
Yeah,
um,
they're very much in the
the
hunt. They
Bucks.
also have the tiebreaker over Tampa as well, so they're still very much in it. Going back to that draft, and even going into that draft, I thought Michael Penix was the best, and I'm not going to say best quarterback, but I think he was the best passer in that draft class. He has a cannon of an arm, extremely accurate. I don't know if he's the most mobile quarterback in the world, but I really like him as a player, and especially now, fast forward to December of 2024, and we're already needing a new quarterback. Turns out that was seems to be the right move. We haven't seen him play yet. We'll have a pretty easy test this week against the Giants. I don't want to say easy; it's still an NFL. He's gonna get a shot to kind of ease his way into that starting role. When they drafted him, my jaw hit the floor. I could not believe that they paid Kirk Cousins 90 million guaranteed to then turn around and use that type of draft capital on Michael Penix Jr. As I said, love him as a quarterback. Now that was the right decision, I think looking back on it, I'm really excited to see what he can do. And this Falcons offense has all of the pieces to succeed right away. They have Drake London, they have Darnell Mooney, they have Kyle Pitts, who is still a
Pitts.
bust. I think I don't know what we're gonna do with him.
I thought Kyle Pitts would be a mega star in the NFL, if you ask me.
Yeah, I don't know how he missed. It's starting to seem like it's a bit of a lack of effort. Unfortunately, I would hope that he gets rejuvenated somehow, but I'm not liking the way it's going, unfortunately. And then Bijan, obviously, in that offense. Tyler Algier. I'm just naming off players now, but I mean, I think they have everything they need to succeed. I hope he is a real spark plug for this offense and finally making Falcons games watchable again, because it's been a little bit. I mean, Kirk in the last 4 games, 8 picks, no touchdowns. It was it
Oh,
was it was tough to watch. Love Kirk. I think, funny enough, this is going to be a very fun fact in a few years. He has the single game record for passing yards for a Falcons quarterback in a season when he got benched and lost his job. So he had some good games, but it seemed to have fizzled out. It doesn't seem like he's
I
fully
think it's
healthy.
time to move
Yeah.
on. And to your point, right? I think you said you have the tiebreaker. I think the Falcons have what, the Giants, Panthers, and Commanders. And the Commanders, that's one thing. I think you're traveling to the Washington, and then the Buccaneers have the Cowboys, the Panthers, and the Saints. So there's 2 division games for the Buccaneers, and it's anybody's division right now. I think I predicted much earlier, even the midseason during one of my podcasts, that there's going to be only one team coming from the NFC South. I think I stay with that because I do think that you have 3 teams in the NFC North, and I don't see, and then you have the Eagles and Commanders. So it's going to be very tough for a team out of NFC South, 2 teams out of NFC South. I think, but to your point, I think the Falcons have a great team around Michael Penix Jr. It's not that he's going in with. I still think it's funny because I wanted to ask you this because we were talking about Belichick for UNC. Belichick was actually one of the leading candidates for Atlanta. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, if you've had him, that would have been very interesting.
Yeah, just thinking back to that situation, I think that the front office felt threatened by him in a sense that he's used to having the general manager role. He has an aura about him that is, you're definitely going to lose a lot of control of the team. I don't think that the front office wanted that, which is ultimately a dumb and irresponsible way to manage a team, which is very on brand for the Falcons, in my opinion. I would have taken Belichick in a heartbeat. I still like Raheem Mostert. I like.
especially
Or
if
not
you have
sorry,
all the pieces
Raheem
there, right?
Morris, getting running back mixed up. But yeah, no, I still like him. I like it. I like Zach Robinson as the coordinator that he brought over. Yeah, I mean, we'll see how it pans out. I think Kirk was probably more to blame in just having a defense that just is not capable of getting to the quarterback at all is a big part in the Falcons. I don't want to say struggles this year. They're 500. They have a competent team, and I think there just needs to be a little bit of a spark. And I think this was probably the right time to do so.
Yeah, especially when you beat the lowly Raiders 15-9. That was not an impressive win at
Yeah,
all.
not many times you
And
see a
then,
player lose their job in a win, but that may have
yeah, and
justified
then, I
it.
mean, on Kirk Cousins going back to play against Minnesota, just blown away. I mean, got blown out, 42-21 or something like that. I think I don't remember the score, but I know it was almost like, I'm losing to Sam Darnold of
Did you see the video of
doesn't
the?
bode
It
well.
was against the Vikings. Did you see the video of the? It was a corner, or maybe it was like a safety. Someone in the secondary when they were covering Jeff. It was one of Jefferson and Addison's touchdowns. They had 5 in that game. He got completely turned around and just dove out of nowhere. Probably some of the worst tape you will ever see from an NFL player. Just rough. That was a very very rough game. Not all Kirk's fault on that one. We give up 42 points, but they were going in the wrong direction for sure.
Yeah. So I know you wanted to talk a little bit of college basketball. I know, but I know your Tennessee Vols are number one. And then the other thing also is that from a UConn standpoint, I think they won. They won one of that Xavier game was so tough to watch. It was so tough to watch, and I was getting texts from people at the game too. So it was very exciting. So talk about that. I mean, and I think SEC. I think we both agreed the best conference in the college basketball. You have about close to 8, 9 teams in the top 25. I think.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's the college basketball this year. I don't think there's a clear number one. I do think that Tennessee and Auburn are probably they're probably the tier one, or really cream of the crop of college basketball right now. And then there's a pretty large mix after that. I do want to ask in the UConn game against Xavier a few days ago. Were you worried about Dan Hurley getting teed up after that 3-point attempt? Because he was going after the refs on that, and I was like, if he gets teed up here and they lose the game on a free throw when it's about to go to overtime, that would be a rough look.
Well, if one thing I've learned as when Dan Hurley as the coach is that there's any point in time, if it's a close game, he will get teed up. So it's always worry in my mind. I think what really surprised me was the way Xavier shot the ball that day. I mean, they couldn't find 3 point in the first early in the first half. And then this kid Foster, I mean, they were just shooting lights out. And I mean, at one point, I think they were just shooting only threes. And I mean, UConn would make a run, they would come back and hit a three. So you even when UConn went up by 5, Xavier would cut it down to 2. It was always, it was funny the way the game ended too. I think it was like a block of a 3 point that kept UConn the game. I mean, I think give credit to Tariq Reed from Michigan, transfer from Michigan and Caravan, who just stepped up huge which is exactly what we want. And then I love the kid from Texas, McNeely. I mean, he didn't have anything to do the first half, but because of foul trouble. But then he came back and scored very quickly. And he's a kid that I can see. He's like a Cam Spencer kind of a mold that he's got a lot of energy. He's going to be like almost like in your face kind of a player. So, but it's going to be fun watching the Big East. And I didn't realize the stat, which just blew my mind. UConn had not won a Big East opener since early 2000.
Really?
Yeah, that's like a mind blowing thing, considering that they won multiple championships in this time. That they can win a national championship, but they can't win the Big East opener. So that really surprised me,
I mean,
and
it's gotta make you feel good.
I couldn't believe it.
Since 2000. I mean, they've won a handful of natties.
Yeah, since 2003. I was right. It's since 2003 was the last time because my buddy and I were texting, and that they've not won a Big East opener. And remember, they went from Big East to American Conference, and then they came back to the Big East. But still, they were in the Big East for a long time. That's still 2003, 2024. That's 21 years that you've not won a thing. So, what do you think about once the SEC thing starts right now? What do you think? Fancy Tennessee's chances right?
Well, the Tennessee team looks very similar to they did last year. Outside of Dalton Connect, they have Chaz Lanier this year. He's just putting up a lot of points. Kind of stepped into that role very well. You've got other players that have really stepped up. Very athletic team, very good defensively. I think Ken Palm has him as like number one in like defensive efficiency right now. Auburn is putting up a million points a game right now. They can score with anyone.
They're one of the teams that Auburn. That's why a lot of people are picking
Yeah,
Auburn
I think
to.
Auburn's a
I mean,
favorite right
they're
now to win. Yeah, I think like I want to say the top three as far as like national championship odds. Like it's Auburn, Duke, and then Tennessee. So there's
So you've got three teams in SEC, but Florida, which is actually surprised me, and then Oklahoma, of course, and Tennessee are 11-0. But Kentucky, Auburn, I mean, it's going to be a battle all the way down to when I looked at the standings, not a single SEC team has a losing record. I mean, granted, some of the teams would be, would
yeah
have not
conference
played like
play will
cupcake
change it, mix it
schedule.
up a little bit probably. But yeah, there's
Yeah, and every team, I saw this one, which I think you'll find it very mind-boggling. None of the teams in the SEC currently has a losing streak.
so they never like lost back to back games this whole season.
Yeah, so right now every team, I mean LSU lost 1-1, but when I looked at it, every team in SEC right now has a winning streak. At least whether it's 1
Got
or
it.
10 or 11.
Wow. Yeah.
That's that is I never thought. I mean, I just pulled the stat out. Like I thought it was pretty thing, but excited to see. I mean, the same thing. I mean, the Big East. I mean, except for Seton Hall, every team is actually above 500. But it's still not a like I said. It's top heavy. Big East is like you got the Marquettes, you got the Creighton. Unfortunately, this year is 7-5, which is mind-boggling considering they were able to retain their center. So, but other than that, I still think Marquette is
I
the
did want
best
to ask
team
about that
there.
with UConn because I mean I watched the Xavier game earlier this week, but I haven't watched a ton of UConn this year. I mean they lost Donovan Clingan to the NBA. Like is that how are they as far as like size goes? I mean do they have the big men to replace
Well,
him?
they don't have the Klingon kind of a guy, but they do have Samson Johnson, who's very more athletic than Klingon. But one thing that I saw in Xavier, which Reed is somebody that exactly where Dan Hurley's imploring him to be more bigger presence, is that one thing that you can guarantee in Dan Hurley's teams would be that their shot blocking thing, even their guards, everybody is going to be like, in for shot blocking. And I think they definitely have Samson Johnson. They got their another kid Singare, but I think it's Reed is starting to put more muscle into their center. I mean, it won't be like a Klingon, but I think one thing that the Huskies have definitely is that their defense have faltered from last year because remember they lost Castle and Newton and all the Klingon. That's a huge loss. And for a team to be where they are, I mean, after the Maui thing, they're back. I mean, they're definitely winning 5 in a row, especially winning on the road in Texas, and then beating Baylor, then going to Madison Square Garden. Of course, it was a home game, again, beating Gonzaga, which was number 8, and then beating Xavier, which is a pretty decent Big East team. They're definitely back on I would say now the players have started to feel each of their roles, and I definitely think with Hurley's coaching and the coaching staff, I think they'll be in a battle
Yeah.
every game. I mean, they're not going to be afraid of anyone.
Yeah, it seems like they're back on the right track. And yeah, I mean when you win back-to-back national titles, you would take a down year every once in a while, and it seems like they're not even going to really have a down year now that they've bounced back. And I imagine that's really the expectation with Dan Hurley at this point is even in your down years, you're still going to see a top 10 team. So really impressive what they're doing.
Yeah. And I think they're playing tomorrow at noon, but unfortunately, with the college football playoffs going on, I might be like toggling between these two
You
games.
have
But,
college football,
I think
college
they're playing Butler.
NFL is mixed in there too. They I think it's like the Steelers Ravens tomorrow too. I mean, it's an
Oh my
unbelievable.
God, there's two huge games
Yeah,
though. Yeah, yeah, you got
yeah,
these. Yeah, it's phenomenal. I definitely think the NFL should have. They got the Texans Chiefs too. That's a big matchup, and I think looks like Mahomes is clear. You got the Steelers Ravens at 4:30. So it is crazy. It's a football, I would say, madness tomorrow, with of course college basketball, thrown in there. But it's going to be exciting, and I'm waiting for tonight's game, Notre Dame,
yeah.
Indiana, and we'll probably be texting and seeing who's going to come up. I think we both picked Notre Dame, and let's see if. And I'm rooting for Indiana, obviously, but for a friend of mine who's a big Indiana fan. But let's see if they can
Yeah.
come through. So this has been fun, Josh. And then, of course, after this week, we should come back and hopefully your Tennessee Vols make it to the next round. And then that'll be a huge game if it's Oregon and Tennessee.
Rose Bowl. Doesn't get much
I
better
mean,
than
I,
that.
I can't wait. I can't wait for
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
one.
no, it's
Yes,
always
I
always
know.
fun for you to be on. And yeah, thanks for having me on again. Definitely looking forward to talking more after hopefully a Tennessee win. But if they lose, I will also have some thoughts. So either way, we'll be happy to jump
Of
back
course,
on.
of course. All right, that was good. So let's just go to hit the record button to wrap it up. And thanks again,
For sure.
Josh. Much appreciated. Good night.
Thank you for listening. Primo will be back soon.